Thanks for coming to the show. And my name's Jeff Chen for people online. This is weird talking to like two audiences, but I'll try to do my best. I appreciate you all joining from all over the country. So yeah, I've been living in Alaska for about 11 years, and I kind of, when I got here, I didn't see many Taiwanese people that lived in Alaska, and I think occasionally I'd run into people on the street. Sometimes I would just wear this shirt that just says Taiwan, and then so I would just wear this shirt around town, and then I would just like run into people, and they'd be like, "Oh, are you from Taiwan?" And you have to talk with them. And so a couple of years ago, I joined this this photography group. It was called Show and Tell Alaska, and it was a really good opportunity to just like be mentored by other photographers and just have a support network. And they really kind of pushed us to create projects, and so this project kind of came out of that. And the idea behind Tropical Islands Up North is I wanted to just explore the potentially like northernmost diaspora of Taiwanese people in the world. I don't know, there might be some other Taiwanese people further north, but I just thought it'd be an interesting thing for myself to do to like get to know my community more here. And so I appreciate the Alaska Photographic Center for hosting this, Michael Conti and Jason Lazarus and Gail, who I just met tonight. Appreciate you all holding this space and allowing photographers and other storytellers to just like share their work. And to the Akela Space, ooh, C-stand. But so yeah, I appreciate the Akela Space for hosting me here and the show here. We had an opening exhibit on first Friday, and it was really fun. So, and Jason, the other Jason, sponsored 50 bobas, and they were gone in like 30 minutes. So this time we brought pork over rice. And so the dish here is called lobapeng, and it's a really common dish where I'm from. My family's from a place called Gai in Taiwan, and it's a little bit further south. And I think I'll just go ahead and just share. I can't share a screen. I don't know if Jason's controlling this, but I'll just keep talking until. But yeah, my family's from a place called Gai in Taiwan. In Taiwanese, it's Gai. In Mandarin, it's Jiayi. Start my video. So my family's from Gai, and I would go back when I was a kid. Most summers, I would spend a little bit of time there, and I was really grateful for my family to share a lot of my roots with me when I would go back there. And in the States, every Sunday I would have to go to a language school. Hey, what's up? Welcome. And at the language school, I kind of hated it. I was just like, another day in school, and I had to, pick up this other language. But now I'm really grateful for it, obviously, and I appreciate being able to speak Taiwanese and Mandarin with my family, and it's just like offering ways to connect with my culture. And so I want to share a little bit about Taiwan before diving into this. Oh, okay, cool. I can do it now. So I'm just going to go through these slides online. And so this is the title of the project. And if anyone has questions while I'm talking, feel free to chime in too. This is a photo of me as a child. For those of you that can't see, it's me smoking cigarettes. And, oops. And so that's my cousin in the back, and we're just having a good time in Taiwan. Here's a family photo. This is in Taiwan in the tropics. And, so Taiwan is 24 million people, roughly, and it's got, we're the founders of bubble tea. we export a ton of semiconductors around the world. Some of like the highest quality semiconductors are made in Taiwan. And do y'all know that song "Return to Innocence"? It was made popular by, I think, like an Olympics in the 90s. It was actually, there was like this European electronic band that appropriated that song, used it without permission from an indigenous tribe called the Amis people, and used it for, it was like made popular by the Olympics, I believe. So I don't know, those are just a few things about Taiwan. There's a lot of like developed cities there, and also there's like a lot of rural places there. It's kind of this mixture, and it's like, you know, in the Pacific Ocean, and so it's very much a coastal place. A lot of the communities there rely on the ocean, and yeah, I think that's a good bit of history about Taiwan, and then like the prevalent story about Taiwan that has been occupying a lot of the news space in the past few years. It's like getting more prominent, is this conflict where the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist government, is always putting pressure on the island of Taiwan, and saying that Taiwan is a part of China. And the US is always in a place of like, we're not going to recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation, but we're going to sell you arms. So like, we'll sell you a bunch of missiles to like protect yourself, but there's still like this one China. And so it's, a lot of ways, Taiwanese people feel like we're kind of caught between these two giant empires that use us as a pawn. And it's just like an interesting place to be, because historically, this has happened many times before as well. We've been colonized pretty much like, I think, by like 6 or 7 different entities. And so we have kind of a confusing identity. And I'll share a little bit about my own identity. In Taiwan, there's a lot of different tribes on this tiny island, and they've been in Taiwan for thousands and thousands of years. There was at one point there was about 32 different tribes. Now I think there's 16 that are recognized by the government, and in this photo project, there's some indigenous representation from the tribes, and then there's also like my generation of family comes from the Han migrants that started coming over to Taiwan in the like 1500s, 1600s, and then they started settling in Taiwan around that time. And so we've traced our family lineage back to, I think, like 1732. And in Taiwan, in each of the homes, a lot of homes have this like little altar, and in the altar you can open it up, and there's this panel of names of your family lineage that just you can trace back for generations. So I've seen that opened up a couple of times, and I've seen some photos of that, which is pretty cool. And then there's a later wave of, I'll go over a couple of them. So the Japanese started occupying Taiwan in the late 1800s, and that heavily impacted our culture. And then in 1949, another huge wave of people came to Taiwan. About 2 million people came to Taiwan in 1949, and that was, see y'all later. Thanks for coming. So a group of Chinese people started coming over to Taiwan in 1949. They had just lost a war. There was a Chinese Civil War. I think it started in 1946. Oh, I'm not a historian. I'm not a scholar. This is just like history that I picked up. And so the Chinese Civil War is between the communists and the nationalists in China. When the nationalists lost, they fled to Taiwan. 2 million people, all like pretty much all at once, came to Taiwan and assumed power over the island. That caused a lot of problems, and so Taiwan went into a period of martial law for like the next, I think 38 years or something like that, until the 80s. And during that period of martial law, lots of Taiwanese people, lots of indigenous people were killed off by the nationalist government that came to Taiwan to assume power. A lot of them were like scholars or doctors or like community members. And so that obviously created a lot of issues. The economy and the entire economy changed a lot at that point. And it was a tough like 30 or so years. Since then, democracy happened. That was also a hard fight. And so now we have kind of like one of the more progressive democracies in Asia. We legalized gay marriage, I think, a few years ago. And that's been a big celebratory moment. And we have the first woman president. We've had 4 democratically elected presidents, and the first woman president is in office now. So that's just like a little history of Taiwan. I wanted to share with you, my family owns a store. We sell tobacco and liquor in Chiayi, and we've run this place since the 1930s. And then here's a shot of my grandma's kitchen. It's a really small little kitchen, and I remember one time it got so hot there that a gecko was climbing on the wall, and it died on the wall from like heat stroke or something. I don't know. And then it died on the wall, and it stayed dead on the wall for years. I went back like a few years later, and the fucking gecko, I mean, it was like still there. And I think my family probably just got a kick out of it. So that's Taiwan. This next photo is just a photo of our like democracy in action. It's a photo of like our town square in Chiayi, and there's like thousands of people in the streets, and the opposing parties the night before election will just like gather. There used to be fights that break out, but like all the parties are in this like roundabout, and they just like yell at each other and like play really loud music, and it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so I wanted to document some of our Taiwanese life in Alaska, and I hadn't seen any of this kind of like representation before. And so thanks for for walking around and checking this out first. But I'll kind of just get started. I have a bunch of photos here, and they're kind of in order online here, but this first photo is this one. Actually, sorry, let me turn to you guys. Does anyone have any questions about Taiwan that they need cleared up before we can move on? Or was that a lot of information? And okay. Oh yeah. Let's see. Full screen share. Desktop. Okay. Who has the best boba in town? I think. Wait, did that work, Young? Oh, Amanda. Oh, that didn't change it. What's that? Oh, view. Let's see. Oh, enter full screen. Okay. Cool. Is that better? Okay. Who has the best boba in Anchorage? I think Indigo Tea Lounge has the best boba in town. Yeah. So I guess I'm a photographer. I've worked as a photographer and videographer for, I don't know, Valerie was one of my bosses right there, for a couple of years at Alaska Public Media. And I've worked as a videographer at Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. And then here, now I work, my day job is with Native Movement. And so I'm really grateful to be able to like just continue learning on the equipment I've been able to use. But yeah, so this photo project was started about a year ago when I got this Rasmussen grant. So shout out to Rasmussen, thank you. This person, this is the first photo. This is all just like chronological order. Anyone ever been to Yamaya's in downtown? So Yamaya is just like this tiny Japanese restaurant. This person wanted to remain anonymous, and they're part of the Amis tribe and the Beinan tribe in Taiwan. But what's interesting is they also have like a very strong Japanese identity because of the Japanese occupation of Taiwan. And so her great-grandparents were considered like Japanese citizens. And so that's like a huge part of Taiwanese identity is like the influence of Japanese culture. And so I just wanted to share this. She's a really lovely karaoke singer. So she wanted to remain anonymous, but if you'd like to meet her, she's great. And she spends a lot of time at Yamaya's. Yep. Do they have a specific karaoke night, or is it like a karaoke happens whenever this person wants it to happen. And so you kind of just gotta go find out. This person is Chung. I think he's on the call here today. Oh, yeah, that one right there. So he's carrying a box of boba. Like we had just visited a laundromat in Fairbanks that's also Taiwanese owned. They didn't want their photograph taken, so they're not in this thing. But the owner was really nice, and he was like, "Do you want some boba?" And just gave him a box of boba. And I just, I don't know. I had only met Chung a couple of times, and he actually found out, or we met online before he moved up here, and he had a bunch of questions about like living in Alaska, and he works in architecture, and so it was just really great. So I'm gonna keep going through. Okay, this person also wanted to be anonymous. This is this hotel photo. So if you ever driven down Spenard Road, there's this hotel called America's Best Value, which happened to be on fire. And I was coming home from the airport one day, and I just saw it on fire, and I knew this person lived there, and so I called them immediately, and I ran over with my camera, and like just got breakfast with them, just hung out with them for a little bit, and they showed me. So they've been living at this hotel for like 5 or 6 years, and I think there's a lot of long-term people that live there, and yeah, sometimes I just take photos and think the irony of it is like too much, and I have to show it. It's like America's Best Value, and it's like it's on fire. But like also really unfortunate. Like why is this person living in? Like it just makes me ask those kinds of questions, and I think part of it is their immigration status, and so it's just like interesting to hear more about their story through this photo. This next photo is over here. That's Dr. Roxanne Chan, and she's an acupuncturist in town. And here, this is last summer, and she does like a summer series of Tai Chi Chen. How do you say Tai Chi Chen in English? Tai Chi. Yeah. Or Qigong, yeah. And so she does a summer series, and she's really great. I've gotten acupuncture from her before, and so there's a lot of different identities in Taiwan, and some people don't necessarily identify as Taiwanese. Roxanne identifies as Chinese American. Her family is from that lineage that came over in 1949 to Taiwan. Oh, and I should say, there is like in the older population, in the older generation, the political lines are also kind of there. It's like the people that were in Taiwan before 1949 and the people that came after 1949. That's, in broad strokes, that's a political line. The people that came over in 1949, they're generally part of the Kuomintang party in Taiwan, a little bit more conservative, and also a little bit maybe more interested in having closer ties with China. When they came to Taiwan, initially they thought they would only be in Taiwan for a month, and then that they would regroup and reclaim China, and that didn't happen. There's some stories that I can share about that too. This is Tasha Wang in Homer, and I met her last summer as well, over there. So she's got the cabin, and she's got a very classic Taiwanese bag hanging by her door. It's called the gachiya, and it's just like a really cool farmer's bag. And I asked her a question about what she wanted to like pose with, and she chose this book. This is a book that was written by her brother, and she said when they grew up together, he would just take her around everywhere so she wouldn't get in trouble. And this book is actually about a brother and sister duo that like travel into like these crazy universes and like battle monsters together. And so I just thought that was really cute and wanted to take a photo of her there. And she said something about, we were talking about like relationships and just kind of like if you thought about China and Taiwan as two individuals, and China is often like a very threatening individual, and she was asking like, you know, how would you feel if you were threatened all the time by another individual? You wouldn't feel good. And so that was like one way that she explained kind of this relationship between Taiwan and China. Any questions? Okay. Oh, the book? I don't know. Homer. You can find it in Homer. It's probably the only copy in Alaska. So this next person is Maggie. This person also identifies as Chinese, and she's serving bing, which is they're called wheel cakes, and it's a snack that's derived from a Japanese snack, and it's a popular snack at night markets in Taiwan. And I chose this photo because I think a lot of our identity too is also just like people looking at us, and that like in a lot of ways defines how we operate in the world, I think. And so just like people perceiving us. This one right here. And so she's like making this snack, and then this is at Salmon Fest. And so there's like, you know, a bunch of fun people just like curious and like looking and like just interested in what's going on. And so yeah, if you ever get a chance to eat some of our snacks, they're really tasty. This next photo is the I call it the America photo. I don't know. It's like sesame chicken and a pistol. And I think this is my favorite photo. I just this is Lin Chen Huang, and this is in Soldotna at a restaurant called Golden International. And I just really like the series. It's these three photos right here. That's all from Golden International. And this guy, Lin, is serving a plate of sesame chicken and just like, you know, packing a pistol. And I asked him about it. You know, I mean, it's like common in Alaska for people to see guns and stuff, but you don't see a lot of Asians with guns or Taiwanese people with guns. And so I wanted to ask him about it, and he was just basically like, well, I'm a minority in a small town, and so like I have to protect myself. And it was just, yeah, I just like this photo. This is Sharon Hua. She's from the Paiwan tribe in southern Taiwan, and she's run this restaurant for the past 15 or so years. It's her over here. And she told me an interesting story about her great grandpa, or maybe her grandpa, but it reminded me a lot of kind of the fight for tribal sovereignty here in Alaska too. So her grandpa was a Paiwan chief, and when the the Chinese people came over in 1949, he was like placed in a position of having to negotiate about indigenous rights in Taiwan for all indigenous people. And it just reminded me of like, I don't know, I guess like a little bit like from about like ANCSA or like the earlier fights for tribal sovereignty, and how it's just like people were being colonized and put in a bad position, but then also having to like make the most of it and like really fight for people's rights. Yeah, that's Sharon. And this next photo is about knives, and I just love seeing the Taiwanese knives next to the American-looking knives. This is Ryan, and this is photographed in Taiwan, but he lived in Alaska for many, many years. Came here as a kid, and I think there was like some visa stuff that happened, and he had to go back to Taiwan. And I'm still going through his interview, so I haven't. But I used to work with him in the same office, but now he lives in Taiwan. So I just wanted to meet up with him and hang out and eat some shrimp. In Whittier, there is this gigantic family. It's the Chen family. It's this photo over here. And they invited me to Christmas last year. And this family, they kind of identify as Chinese and kind of identify as Taiwanese too. Most of this family came to Taiwan in 1949. And what's interesting here, there's a lot of generations in this front row here. On the left is Joseph, or Joe Shen, and then that's his mom. So his mom was born in China, and then next to her is her oldest daughter, who was, they left her in China when they migrated to Taiwan. They thought they were only going to be gone for a month, and they didn't see her for 30 years. And they reunited in freaking Whittier. So I just found that to be like, well, they had like arranged for it, and like they met up in China, but then like she eventually moved to Whittier. And so it's just an interesting space where, I don't know, you just grow up in like very different political situations. Joe talked about his family members that were left in China that would get assaulted by the Communist Party, because they knew they were of the Nationalist Party and that they got left behind. And I think his father was executed like at gunpoint. Most of this family, when they talk about the conflict between Taiwan and China, some of the older generation, they're kind of like, well, there's not really much of a conflict. It's outside pressure that's creating this conflict. It's like the US saying that there's a problem here, and then it's creating some conflict. I personally don't necessarily identify with that. I think there is actually a conflict, but it's just interesting to hear the older generation differ from the younger generation.
So all of those people are in that same family that all live in Whittier?
A lot of them live in Whittier. Some of them live in Anchorage. Oh, actually, oh, actually, it's interesting. So when most of them came over, so the owner of Asia Garden is in this photo. You guys go to Asia Garden, sing karaoke. So they're in this photo, and so when they started coming over from Taiwan, a lot of them would work there. And how they ended up in Whittier is that the bank offered them, like the economy was shrinking at the time because the pipeline was built. And then the bank was like, hey, do you want to run this restaurant and potentially own it? And they ended up running this restaurant in Whittier, and then also buying up the museum. They bought the hotel.
So they ran the bar, and then they run the store. They own the store, and then they own like a quarter or more of the baggage building. They're like one of the few landowners in Whittier, and it's like really hard to find land there. But they love it because the building reminds them of Taiwan, because it's built so solid. And in Taiwan, buildings are really solid because of earthquakes. And he was like making fun of like wooden homes. This is Bibo. She married into the family. This is on the 10th floor of the baggage building. This photo here. And she came over on a J1 visa and worked in Naknek at a cannery. It was a bad fishing year, and she had frostbite from working in a cooler. Ended up in Anchorage. A lot of people got laid off that year. And then so she ended up in a hostel and called her parents and was like, hey, I need help. Her parents prayed on it, and they connected her. They like ran into an old family friend, and they were like, oh yeah, we have a friend in Alaska. And so she ended up getting connected with this Whittier family, this huge Whittier family, and fell in love with Victor, who's the guy with the binoculars. And she was like, he's just this wild man. Like, he takes you blueberry picking, he takes you sea kayaking. There's nothing like him in Taiwan. And just like fell in love with him. In this photo, he's looking outside. It's a really icy day outside, and everything's melting. And he's looking at the roadside ditch because it's melting, and he wants to kayak the ditch. So I don't know. It's just like a really adventurous family, and it was fun to hear about each of their stories. This is Ingrid Shim. She owns Aurora Chocolates right here. If you came to the first event, there was really delicious gourmet chocolates, and she makes them here in town. She's also Indigenous Taiwanese, and shared a story with me about one of her earlier on jobs that she had. So in Taiwan, there's at some points there was also a lot of human trafficking that would take place, and one of her jobs was working for the Catholic Church, and they would do welfare checks on rural homes. And she said she was like fresh out of college, and would go around to different homes and make sure the women and children that were supposed to be there were there, and not like missing. And so, obviously in Alaska, this is an issue as well. And it just like really reminded me of the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue here in Alaska. And what was interesting to hear her talk now, she's like, yeah, I own a business now, and like I can hire like middle-aged minority women, and like they can be a part of the workforce and like feel included in society here. And I just thought that was like really uplifting to hear her story. This is Ming Stevens over here, and she's Taiwanese American, and cooks up a storm, and just really welcoming with to her friends, and has a ton of cooking experience with Taiwanese foods. And so here she is serving on the Lunar New Year. This photo over here is out in Bethel, two people ice fishing. And this is Chris Liu and Barbara Liu. Chris is Taiwanese, Barbara is Yupik. And they met in Bethel years ago. He came, and I think he had a sister that was teaching there. He fell in, or I think he really loves Bethel. He became a police chief in Bethel, and then he's worked for the Department of Correction for years and years. He's retired now. He's also a Pentecostal preacher. I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't grow up Christian. He took me ice fishing one day, and then he took me to his church the next day, and it just blew my mind. I didn't really know what was going on, and I was just photographing. And then they do the head, like the hand, like when you're like channeling God or something. I don't really know, but like people are like having this really intense spiritual experience, and it's just interesting to have this Taiwanese person at the nexus of this in Bethel, like, and to my knowledge, he's the only Taiwanese person of his generation. He's got a couple of kids there as well, and some moved away. But it was just pretty cool to hear from someone that's lived there for a really long time. And this is out on the Kuskokwim River, and is it the Johnson River? I think the Johnson and Kuskokwim River at the intersection there. A lot of people were fishing for pike. His wife, Barbara, is Russian Orthodox Church, and I really loved looking at one of their shelves, and it was just like this mixture of Russian Orthodox text and like Pentecostal text and text in Mandarin and text in Yuktun. And on their dinner table was like Peking duck and dried pike and like other Taiwanese food. So it was just like really cool to see that in Bethel. This guy is, I think his name is Brian. He's worked at an airport bar for many years. I think he worked there for like 20 or so years at the airport, and just like really loved meeting people from all walks of life. Oh yeah, over here, this guy on the walk. So he shared a lot about that with me, and he would never get a chance to fish in Alaska in the summer, and so he said plenty of his customers would like just bring him fish. And he got a chance to visit rural Alaska a couple of times, and he really loved that. He retired for 2 years, got really bored, and then went back to bartend again for 10 years. And then like now he's finally retired. This is Wu Li Pei. This was also photographed in Taiwan. And this guy was a banker, and he worked with Elmer Rasmussen. Elmer Rasmussen hired him when he first got to town. They needed someone that would speak Japanese, and since he grew up in Japanese colonized Taiwan, he was fluent in Japanese. In his book, this guy's written a book. In his book, he talks about like being born Japanese and then being forced to be Chinese, but then like the whole time he knew his identity was Taiwanese. So anyways, he came to the US, worked for Elmer Rasmussen at a bank, and did that for a few years. They had different philosophies. Elmer Rasmussen called him one of his guard dogs at the end, and Wu Li Pei was like, nah, you can't call me a dog. And so he was like, well, I'm gonna quit. And so he quit, ended up working for Frank Murkowski, or working with Frank Murkowski. And he told me a story about the bank was mostly in Fairbanks, I think. And he lived in Anchorage, and he would take Frank's private jet to Fairbanks several mornings a week. And a young Lisa Murkowski was his maid, like when he would, like at his Fairbanks house. And I actually ran into Lisa Murkowski the other day, and we talked a little bit about him. So, so yeah, he's just like an interesting guy that comes from a banking background, and now lives back in Taiwan. He was a big part of the pro-democracy movement in Taiwan. And so he went back to Taiwan to really help out with some of the presidential campaigns that were very pro-democracy. And back here, there's Sophia Petroni, and she's a bike instructor, mountain bike instructor, and a teacher in town. And her family had a restaurant in Muldoon, I believe, and then she also grew up partially in Sitka as well. Evie and Helen in this photo run Elite Spa, and Evie is also the co-owner of Chopsticks, which is a Chinese restaurant in the mall, and that's been around for years and years. And yeah, they opened up a little massage joint in town. And this, I think this is the last photo. This is Kevin Huo, and this ping pong photo over here. And I just really love talking to him. And I think a lot of the people I talked to spoke of like us being like the younger generation of Taiwanese people. And you know, whenever I asked about this conflict, they would be like, well, it's up to you all now, like what to do. And it was fun to talk to Kevin about that kind of stuff too. He goes to school at UAF in the Northern Studies program and is really interested in politics. And he was one of the only, like 1 out of 2 people that knew about this legislation that Dan Sullivan had brought up about Taiwan. So kind of shows you how much outreach was done to the Taiwanese community about this piece of legislation that Dan Sullivan brought up about Taiwan. And so, yeah, I think that's it. I'll stop there, I think. I feel like I'm just rambling on about the photos, but I wanted to just share about all this stuff with you all. So thank you.
Did someone ping the bomb over you while you were?
I think that was like, no, he was playing with yeah, he was playing. Oh, I got second place. There was 4 of us playing ping pong. I got second place, by the way. And Kevin won, and I was just photographing him at the end. But yeah, he was just playing against another student. Online, does anyone have any questions? This is so weird to be like. Any questions online?
I do have a question. I'll raise my hand.
Yeah, any other questions in person? Joel?
So the overall body of work, how much work would you say produced for this project, and how did you sort of like decide what to feature for the show?
I tried to just like include most of the people that I photographed and interviewed. I kind of just wanted it to be like broader as opposed to like focus on just like one family. And I'm glad I decided to do that because it allowed space for like very different walks of life to be presented. But yeah, I think I took like thousands of photos, hundreds of photos with each person because I'm not like, you know, I don't, yeah. I don't really have like a really strong process down yet. So I'm still like learning how to cull through photos quickly, but yeah, this was like a really good lesson for me. Yeah, Melissa. Not really. Yeah, I had, I was just gonna post them up online and share some stories out with the world, I guess. I had thought about like maybe a magazine or something like that, and just to get stuff in a magazine somehow. But I don't know. I'm just kind of taking it step by step, and I'm a major procrastinator. And so these are the captions here, and it's unfinished. Yeah, Bria.
Is there like much like cohesive Taiwanese community in Alaska? Like, do all of these people know each other?
Oh.
Do they get together, or is it mostly just like different family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm supposed to repeat questions. So the question is about like community. Is there like a overall community of Taiwanese people? It doesn't feel like there is. It doesn't feel like there is a Taiwanese community. A lot of people live very separate lives. I think, yeah, I think it is pretty like disjointed. There's a lot of different identities and like political beliefs, and I think like within the US, I feel like a lot of people are just doing different things, and there's not a ton of Taiwanese people. in Alaska. And so it's kind of like, yeah, some people know each other, but a lot of people didn't. Yeah. Holly?
How did you find all these people?
Sometimes from wearing this shirt, and then sometimes just, I don't know, I like to talk to people. And
And how long have you been putting all this together?
a little over a year.
Just a year?
Yeah.
So a year ago, you said, I'm going to start looking for Taiwanese people in Alaska.
Yeah.
Chat them up.
I wear the shirt like 3 times a week.
Get their name and contact information and save it for.
Yeah, I mean, I have their contact information now. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Matt Johnson online is asking for more information about the legislation that Senator Sullivan introduced.
Oh, yeah. So Senator Dan Sullivan has introduced legislation the past 2 years, and it's called the Stand with Taiwan Act. And it's basically says if China were to ever militarily attack Taiwan, the U.S. would respond with economic sanctions. So I don't know if that sounds like, to me, that sounds like a threat, right? Like kind of like and it's like in some ways that is how I would maybe like the US government to respond. But as like a precursor to potential war, it feels kind of like this like thing that would instigate. And so then it just feels like 2 empires just like doing whatever they want to do. And then the island of Taiwan is just like, well, what, I mean, if you're going to keep talking, we might be in trouble, you know? So yeah, it's just like an interesting thing. I don't think it's gotten out of committee. So I don't think it's gained any traction of any sort. Yeah.
You said you had a pretty big variety of individuals, which I can see here. Did you get a lot of different perspectives on the geopolitical situation in Taiwan?
Yeah. There was, representation of like all political persuasions in Taiwan and in the U.S. So lot of Trumpers, maybe not a lot, but there's a lot of more conservative Taiwanese people, and then there's also a lot of progressive leaning people. I think in the U.S., Republicans tend to be more Republican politicians tend to be more willing to speak up about Taiwanese democracy. So if there's any elected officials out there listening, I generally vote Democrat. So maybe, come on, Democrats. But yeah, so it's different persuasions and yeah. Sam.
Do you know what your next project is going to be?
Rest. Yeah. Yeah. B.
What sort of, what would you say is like one of your biggest challenges through the artistic process that you encountered and maybe still have, but
I think just burnout. I think I don't know, just like B's my boss. I work a full-time job and took on a few other like extracurricular projects this year, and I just felt tired all the time and like didn't get to spend as much time with my partner Emily and friends and like be around people. And so I feel like that was a big challenge for me. Yeah. Let's see.
Jeff?
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk about your process on choosing one image, because you said you took like thousands, and how did you land on like a certain one of like, you know, the process and versus
A lot of it's just like purely aesthetic for me. Like one for Roxanne, for example, the like up until the very last minute, I really wanted to go with this other image that was kind of similar to this image of Maggie, where a bunch of white people are like looking at them, and but then I felt like that idea was like fulfilled by this Maggie image, And so I felt like this was like the better composition of Roxanne. So I wanted to go with this photo of Roxanne. So that was some of the deciding factors. And then a lot of times, like, I don't know, like I don't have a lot to say about a lot of photos. Sometimes it's just like purely aesthetic for me. Yeah, just like a gun and sesame chicken. It's just like, yeah. Yeah.
This might sound really corny, but what was your greatest joy while working on this project? Like really just lit up your life.
I think that just like the being able to travel around Alaska and meet Taiwanese people and just like hear more about their stories, like I don't know, like sometimes I want to like interview my own parents, but like they're pretty hesitant, like they're not gonna just want to do an interview with it. So like interviewing like other people that are Taiwanese helps like fill in some of those gaps of like history and stories and stuff like that. And so just like being able to connect people and also to like advance our narratives on our diaspora feels good. Like I feel very American. I feel very Taiwanese, but then like I feel perceived as not that by my own communities a lot of times. So like being able to create, like to be in the space of like adding to the narrative of what it means to be Taiwanese American feels good. Yeah.
Has talking to all these people changed how you view yourself in that regard?
I think I can see a little bit more about, so like my family, I think generally is more on the end of like, we believe in like a free and sovereign Taiwan, and like Taiwan is a independent nation. So I think that's like generally where I see myself identifying. But then doing this project made me think a little bit more about different perspectives on that. And I think most people in Taiwan want the status quo, which is what we have right now, which is a democracy, and not necessarily like loudly proclaiming that we're a country, because they know if we keep doing that, then the Chinese government might attack. So I think I have a little more like sympathy for that moderate perspective, or empathy.
Jeff, were there any like common experiences or themes that you got from your interviews that stood out to you?
Nobody wants war. And someone I interviewed said war is out of season. And I just thought that was like nobody wants to send their kids to war. And yeah, I think that was pretty common. Yeah. Yeah, Jen.
Could you talk a bit about your title?
Tropical Islands Up North. Are y'all okay? Okay, I feel like I'm still talking too much. Is this okay? I'll just keep going? Okay. Like, this is so weird. Why are you all looking at me? Tropical Islands Up North. Oh, hey, how's it going? Tropical Islands Up North. I just wanted that to be the title because I thought about the fact that what I was talking about earlier was like I don't feel like there's a huge Taiwanese community, like one Taiwanese community, and so it felt like we're all islands in the north, and so that just kind of stuck in my head. Yeah, and then my cousin designed the logo and these cutout things, and yeah, Jenny. Shout out to Jenny.
Cousin in the photo?
No. I have no cousins.
Oh, I thought that was a cousin.
Oh, no, yeah. It's only me and my lineage that lives up here. Let's see, any questions? Okay, cool. Hi, Tom in Maryland. Cool. Anyone else? Any what?
Any threads or stories that you'd like to put more attention on if you were to continue?
I think it would be interesting to, like the Shen family, like everyone loves Asia Garden, and like they run Asia Garden, and they have such an interesting story. Like just the fact that this mother didn't see her daughter for 30 years was just like mind blowing to me. Like, you know, you could create a documentary out of that, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Oh. Vivian, obviously you're growing with more than on culture. Have you at any point struggled with your personal identity? Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs, and yeah, at some point I was just like, oh, this would be a lot easier if I was white, you know, like, and I was just like identified, like I had a bunch of white friends, and like it felt like I wanted to like really fit in with them. And so I think in a lot of ways I like struggled in that sense, like wanting to fit in with white people. And I think it wasn't until like I moved up to Alaska actually, that I like really, I think people in Alaska speak about their identities in a very strong way, and they talk about their families in many introductions, and that really helped me like want to dig into my culture more. And like I had always spoke, I learned how to speak Taiwanese from my grandma. I learned how to speak Mandarin. Like I think Mandarin was my first language. So like I had the basics in there to like the building blocks, I guess, to like be able to keep learning. And so yeah. Cool. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Appreciate you all.